last presentation today is another situation where we're honoring the life and legacy of a young lady and her family that were thrust into the national spotlight here recently from a very, very tough situation in Athens, Georgia. Secretary, read the caption, please.
Senate Resolution 756 by Senator Moore of the 53rd and others. A resolution honoring the life and memory of Laken Hope Riley and for other purposes. Whereas the state of Georgia mourns the loss of one of its most distinguished citizens with the passing of Laken Hope Riley on February 22nd, 2024. And whereas Laken Hope Riley was born on January 10th, 2002 in Marietta, Georgia, a beloved daughter of William Jason Riley and Allison Phillips. And whereas with a deep passion for caring for others, she attended the University of Georgia, where she was a beloved member of the Alpha Chi Rho sorority, and later began a nursing program at the Augusta Medical College's Athens campus. And whereas a young woman of enduring and abiding faith, Laken Hope Riley served the Lord as part of Woodstock City Church and Watkinsville First Baptist Church, dedicating innumerable hours of her time and energy to aiding her community and participating in mission trips. And whereas she gave inspiration to many through her high ideals, morals, and deep concern for her fellow citizens. And whereas she was a person of magnanimous strengths with an unimpeachable reputation for integrity, intelligence, fairness, and kindness, and by the example she made of her life, she made this world a better place in which to live. And whereas a compassionate and generous young woman, Laken Hope Riley will long be remembered for her love of family, friendship, and community, and will be missed by all who had the great fortune of knowing her. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body join in honoring the life and memory of Laken Hope Riley and express their deepest and most sincere regret at her passing. That completes the order, Mr. President.
And there you have it. Welcome back to Inside the Law. I'm your host, Philip Holloway. As you just heard from the Georgia Senate resolution, on February 22nd of this year, 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley was abducted and brutally murdered, allegedly by Venezuelan immigrant José Ibarra. At the time of her murder by blunt force trauma, Laken was jogging at the University of Georgia in Athens. Her body was found in Oconee Forest Park. The suspect, José Ibarra, is accused of illegally entering the United States. He has been charged with felony murder, false imprisonment, and kidnapping. Thank you for joining us tonight for this discussion of this horrible murder. Joining us tonight is a special guest, a friend of mine. His name is Scott Berry. He's the retired sheriff from Oconee County, which is next door, just to the west of Athens, Clark County. And the body of Laken Riley was found just miles from where he lives. He's very familiar with the area. He's still active in area law enforcement. And in fact, he's just been elected as a coroner, which will be his next life event that he's going to take up as soon as he takes office the first of the year. So welcome, Sheriff Berry, retired. How are you this evening, sir?
I'm well. How are you, Phil?
We're doing great. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here. Take just a minute and introduce yourself to the viewers and tell us who you are. I'm sure that I left a lot of things out, but tell us who you are, what you have done, what you are doing, what you're going to do, and what you might know. Well, how you might know about this case.
Well, I went to the Police Academy here in Athens, Georgia. I graduated September 22nd, 1978. So I've been a lawman a long time now. And all that time's been spent either in Athens or in Oconee County and now Madison County, where I'm a training sergeant for the Madison County Sheriff's Office. And like you said, I'm moving on to something else. at the first of the year, I'll be the coroner here in Madison County, and I'm looking forward to that.
So,
But,
obviously the sheriff, you had a long career as the elected sheriff in Oconee County. That's the chief law enforcement officer in the county. It's an office established by the Constitution.
yes.
And coroners, deal with death and death investigations. So tell us what led you to go in this new direction in terms of your career. And by the way, congratulations on being elected coroner.
Well, thank you. I was looking. I needed something to do that got me a little bit more involved in the community than I was, and I talked to some people. They were really encouraging me to run for coroner. There was a need for it in this county, and I went ahead, and I was the only one that qualified. So by default, I win. I guess
You win.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I mean, it's a thankless job. I'm sure it pays a lot. As
it
coroner
pays.
there. But
Yeah,
So what?
Fani Willis money.
What are your duties going to be once you take office?
Well, essentially, and you know this, Phil, because you've been around doing various things yourself. But the coroner in Georgia really is a link between the citizens of the county and the state medical examiner and the state crime lab, and it'll be an investigative role, but not in the same sense that I've filled one all my adult life. It'll be more of gathering information for the crime lab and the medical examiners. And that's a good question that just popped up. A ME, a medical examiner, is someone that is a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I gather information for the doctors in Atlanta that service Madison County and pass that on to them. And they do what doctors do.
Yeah. So a coroner in Georgia, in the metro Atlanta counties, the larger, more populous counties,
Sure.
They have usually a medical examiner. They don't have the office of coroner, but there has to be a determination made, at least in most cases under Georgia law. Certainly if someone dies and they're not under the care of a doctor, there has to be a determination made as to what the cause of death and what the manner of death is.
Yeah.
Can you shed light on what the difference is between cause of death and manner of death?
Yeah, the cause of death would be blunt force trauma, for instance. Cause of death would be injuries sustained in a car crash, heart attack, something like that. But the manner of death is limited to only just a few options. You've got undetermined, of course. You've got natural, accidental, and homicide. And when you're trying to determine the cause and the manner of death, that could be real important as far as insurance money and things like that are concerned. So you've got to be careful, and you've got to have a good idea of what you're doing in order to be able to do this.
Yeah. So, in terms of, the cause of death, the way I like to think of it is what's the actual, mechanism that caused someone's death. But the rest of the equation, whether it's an accident, whether it's a homicide, whether it's a suicide, those types of things have major legal implications. For example, if something's a homicide, then, it might also be a crime. But just because something is a homicide doesn't mean it's necessarily a crime. There's lots of homicides that might not be a crime. The one that immediately comes to, like if the state executes a prisoner, that's a homicide because it's a death caused by another person. Or if it's a self-defense type of justified homicide, then that's obviously not a crime. If it's simply an accident, accidental death could also kind of be sort of also in the nature of a homicide, but it can have very, very meaningful differences. And so the coroner's job is to make sure that the medical examiner has everything that they need to be able to make that very important medical legal determination following, the autopsy. Is that about how it works?
Absolutely. And like you said, people, particularly here in Georgia, mistake the word homicide for murder. And you and I both know that's not the same thing. Homicide's a death at the hand of another, and a murder requires a specific intent or the commission of a felony. So.
All right. Well, since we're talking about felonies, the subject of tonight's discussion is the Laken Riley murder. And if you can kind of just tell us a little bit about what happened to Laken Riley. You're over there, you're in the area, you have the connections in law enforcement. Why was this individual charged with her murder?
Relatively quickly, they were able to get video from various stores and places near where Laken's body was found. And they were able to not only put his brother, Ibarra's brother, in and around the scene, but they put Ibarra in and around the scene. And he actually, it's my understanding that he disposed of some items that he had on his person in a dumpster. And that was captured on video, and they were able to recover those items. And they'll be used as evidence in the trial, I'm sure.
What kind of items was it? Is it like items of clothing?
I'd say bloody clothing.
Was it her clothing or his, or do you know?
I really don't want to go into a whole bunch of a case that's not actually mine, Phil. And I hope you appreciate that.
Of course.
I know what I've been told by friends of mine that I've got faith in, but they're not talking, so I've got to kind of limit what I can say. I hope you understand that.
Of course. Well, so, I mean, the case appears to be, by all public accounts, things that have been discussed publicly, it appears to be a pretty strong case. Is that a fair statement?
I would say it's a very fair statement. Yes. I think there's a lot of,
go ahead.
I think there'll be a lot of video evidence in this case and other evidence, such as the weapon that was used and that type of thing.
All right. So they said it was blunt force trauma. Do we know if there was a weapon, as you mentioned, like what type of weapon it might have been?
Do we know? Yes. Am I going to tell you? Not until the police do.
All right. So that's fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So we got blunt force trauma, and we've got video, and we all know that everything is on video these days. You've got, if this happened near a convenience store or a gas station, there's obviously going to be surveillance video, but everybody also now has like doorbell cameras.
Yes.
Is it common for law enforcement to kind of fan out and look for that type of evidence?
That's one of the first things we do now. Of course, this is all relatively new. When I started, and when you were deputy sheriff, Phil, we didn't have those kinds of things.
No,
we didn't have that kind of information available to us. And but yeah, the first thing you want to do is fan out and make sure you've got who has video, who has real video, and not fake cameras, and get your hands on any video footage you can. Before it goes away.
So it's fair to say that would have happened in this case pretty early.
Yes.
What police agency would have been responsible primarily for investigating this particular murder?
Well, it happened on the University of Georgia campus. Clark County was involved. Athens, Clark County police were involved, heavily involved. So you've got the Athens Clark County Police, the University of Georgia Police, GBI was called, and my understanding there were some other federal agencies called. I don't know to what extent they participated, but listen, this was all hands on deck. When a case like this, a co-ed being murdered, the last one that was murdered on campus was Donald Lynn Allen in 1983. And that was a case I actually helped work on.
And that was on the campus at the University of Georgia. Well, that's a
North
long
Houston.
time. And, so we have a situation where she's out, apparently she's jogging, and this attack seemingly comes out of nowhere. Do you think there's any suggestion, or has it been reported that perhaps he was laying in wait for her, or was it planned, or has it been sort of maybe just a crime of opportunity, if you know?
I don't know. I don't know. It seems to me like a crime of opportunity. He saw her, and I honestly believe she never saw it coming. I think she was ambushed and killed shortly thereafter.
Well, she's been charged with kidnapping. So sometimes when you hear he's been charged with kidnapping. When you hear kidnapping, sometimes you think about somebody, being taken away, abducted, held for ransom. This wasn't that kind of kidnapping, though, was it?
No.
What would kidnapping in this context then mean?
It wasn't a kidnapping in the context you see all the Netflix movies and things about. It was a kidnapping where she was dragged or transported a short distance from where she was attacked. And of course, in Georgia, any movement is kidnapping.
And by any movement, you mean like literally any movement. So you can take somebody, people don't realize this, but you can take someone against their will, move them 6 or 8 inches or a foot or any small amount. And that would be the felony offense of kidnapping. And by the way, if there's kidnapping with bodily injury, you can get life in prison for it, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
So you've got all these offenses, murder, being obviously a capital offense, meaning you can get a life sentence or even death in Georgia. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute when we get into the prosecution of this case. But the minimum sentence for murder in Georgia is life in prison. And the only question is it with parole or is it without parole? That is, unless, of course, it's a death penalty case. But now we've got charges of felony murder, which means that the death resulted while someone is committing some other felony. In this case, if you hit somebody with using blunt force trauma with some kind of an object, if you strike them, that's an aggravated assault. That's a felony. And if that felony leads to death, then even if you didn't intend to kill somebody, then murder would apply. But we also, I think, don't we have a charge of malice murder in this case?
Yes, there is.
Now, what is the difference between malice murder and felony murder?
Malice means you form the intent to commit that murder. You form the intent to commit that murder and then commit it. You have malice toward that other person. You have hatred or God, there's a whole list of
abandoned and malignant heart.
Malignant heart. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. So that's what malice means in Georgia. If you have an abandoned and malignant heart, okay, and you if you have time to basically think about what you're going to do, and you kill somebody, that would be malice. You don't have to lay in wait for like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour. If you just have any premeditation and deliberation, even if it's just for a split second, that would be enough to trigger the malice murder law.
And if you regret it immediately, that's enough to trigger the malice murder.
Now, we don't know that there's any evidence that he regretted it, except I think he probably regretted getting caught.
You regretted getting caught, that's for sure.
All right. So he's sitting in jail. Is there any chance he's going to get bond in this case?
I can't imagine getting a bond. I cannot even fathom he'll get a bond in this case.
Well, now we are talking about Athens, Clark County, and some things go down over there that do raise eyebrows.
There are strange things that happen, and I have to admit, the current DA has been one to have a lot of strange things happen to her over there. But for the life of me, I can't envision a circumstance where he'd get a bond.
All right. So once law enforcement wraps up their investigation, and by that, I mean, not just the police, but you're going to have certain types of evidence that would have had to go to the state crime lab for analysis, whether it be blood, whether it be trace evidence such as hair, things of that nature. Even weapons go down for analysis, right, to the state crime lab. And the crime lab is very, very backed up. But at some point, All of that evidence will be processed and the case file will be complete. Where does that case file go once law enforcement finishes up their investigation?
Well, Deborah Gonzalez is the DA in Athens, and she has asked for a special prosecutor for this case, and she desperately needs one.
Well, now,
because
hang
if
on.
it was left up to her, nothing would ever happen with this case.
Listen, let's face it, as awful and tragic and horrific as this murder is, I mean, you and I have been around this game a long time, you longer than me, and I've been at it almost 30 years. I believe I could prosecute this case with one hand and one brain tied behind my back, because it seems to me to be a straightforward murder case. Murders are not that complicated to prosecute. A DUI case might be more complicated to prosecute than a murder, particularly one where the evidence, physical evidence, is so apparently overwhelming. So why would she being Deborah Gonzalez, the DA in Athens, Clark County, why would she need to bring in a special prosecutor?
Deborah Gonzalez has lost 14 murder cases in the Western Judicial Circuit.
Deborah Gonzalez has lost 14 murder cases. Has she won any murder cases?
46% of the cases that have gone to her office have been dismissed.
All right, so 46% of her cases she's lost that many.
She's dismissed that many.
Oh, okay.
She's dismissed that many. I'm not sure how many she's actually lost.
Well, prosecutors,
she's never won. She's never tried a jury trial and gotten a felony conviction.
Are you kidding me? So you're telling me that an elected district attorney in Georgia has never gotten a felony? Who is it? Is this Nathan Wade in disguise? What's going on here?
It very much reminds me of what you've. It very much reminds me of what we've seen in Atlanta with the incompetence in the district attorney's office. Deborah Gonzalez is a nice person. Okay. Deborah Gonzalez is an entertainment lawyer, and she had no trial experience prior to being elected district attorney. She has spent a lot more time promoting herself than she has being the district attorney and representing victims and families across the Western Judicial Circuit, which is Clark and Oconee counties. And
all right, well, how does somebody like Deborah Gonzalez find herself at the helm of a case such as this? Then, I'm still scratching my head. If you're telling me that she's got no felony convictions to her now, is she actually in the court attempting to try cases and losing them, or what's going on over there?
Yes, she's attempting to try cases and she is losing them.
Has she had any kind of trial advocacy?
She's losing. Like that? The one she doesn't dismiss, she loses. I'm sure somebody was going to come on here and correct me, but I cannot think of a murder conviction that she's got since she's been DA.
You can't think of obviously she's had murder cases, and I think you said 14 trials and no convictions. Is that what you said?
Yes.
14 murder trials and 0 convictions in almost 4 years in her term. Is that about right?
Yes.
All right.
That's right.
Is she one of these types of DAs that has some other agenda in mind other than being an effective prosecutor?
Yeah, she certainly has an agenda. She wants to build a justice center and have her name on some kind of justice center that she wants to build. She wants restorative justice and things along these lines, Phil. That's all well and good. I'm not even saying you can't have that. But the first thing you got to do is make sure your citizens are safe and that you're doing your job, and then come the extras. and she just all she wants to do is all she seems to me all she wants to do is just get through this as easily as possible without any drama, without any without any work being done. And you know as well as I do, DA is a hard job. DA is a very difficult job for not much money. And I worked for the DA's office for 12 and a half years. And we had a great DA's office.
Well, so it has been represented to me that certain of law enforcement leadership in that general area would prefer that her office not have this case, and maybe that there's a way that the federal authorities could pick it up. Do you know if there's any truth to that?
I would guarantee you there have been discussions about how can we get the feds to take this case.
Well, how do you get the feds to take a state murder case?
Well, I'm not privileged to all the information on the inside, Philip. I'm
well,
just
how about this? It's happened before in that.
Yes, it has happened
in recent memory, right? With a certain case that you and I both know about that was prosecuted by the U.S. attorney so that she would not prosecute it. How did it happen in that case? Maybe that could be a blueprint for it moving forward.
My understanding is they linked the murder that we're talking about to interstate commerce, because he was working at a gas station that was involved in interstate commerce. And my understanding is they linked that murder through the interstate commerce, which again makes it a federal felony.
All right. So who is the U.S. attorney that would be sort of in charge of that geographic part of the state of Georgia?
Peter Leary is the U.S. attorney in the Middle District of Georgia. And I want to tell you something. He's a Biden appointee, but I love Peter Leary. Peter Leary I mean, he believes in making people safe. He believes in doing the right thing. And I just think the world of Peter Leary.
Well, I don't understand how someone if you're the elected district attorney, and you have this type of a relationship with law enforcement such that when you have really serious cases, the ones that really matter, like getting justice for Laken Riley, that even local law enforcement wants somebody else to take the case. How did we get here in Athens, Clark County, Sheriff?
I'll be honest with you. In the last 4 years or so, the DA's office has just been a shallow shell of itself. Like I said, I think it's all about the district attorney. It's not about the citizens of the Western Circuit. And when you have somebody that just abandons their position for their own glorification, I think it's easy to run any office into the ground. But
now, are you telling me that an elected district attorney might be in it for their own personal reasons? Does that even happen? Has it ever happened before?
As Fani Willis, I don't know. Yeah, we've got a unique crop of district attorneys here in Georgia, and you know, Georgia had the reputation of being a tough on crime state, and we were. You remember when Zell Miller was governor, and we had the boot camps, and I mean we were hard on folks in Georgia, and going back to the chain gangs. But we're in a hole. The burden has we've had a complete shift in how the prosecutors are doing in the state of Georgia, and it's abysmal. It's abysmal. Look at Atlanta. Atlanta's become crime ridden. Athens is crime ridden. And what do all these places have in common? They have a weak DA or narcissist for a DA or somebody that just won't do their job.
Yeah. All right. Well, so since you brought up Fani Willis, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions about that?
No.
I know you've been following this. All right. So what's your take on it all right, so we have allegations. In fact, I think at this point, it's proof that she used a lot of government money to basically build up her own brand, if you will. She hired this media monitoring company to sort of track her media and TV appearances and sort of give her some guidance on how to make her own media star rise. And she's been, there's been complaints that have been filed. There's been complaints filed with the county ethics authorities and basically saying she's misused money. She's accepting gifts. What do you think ought to happen to prosecutors who engage in that type of stuff and neglect the proper functioning of their office? What is the remedy here? And how can we in Georgia make sure that this is not the kind of DA that gets elected in the future?
When you misuse money like this, there is no question in my mind you should be investigated. And if you're found to have committed a crime, be arrested. That's what we think should happen. That's what the citizens of this state think should happen.
All right. Well, hypothetically, let's just say hypothetically, a district attorney takes the stand and testifies in a case, hypothetically, and they say something that's not true. Let's just say, hypothetically, they say they had an affair with somebody that began in 2022, when in fact there's credible evidence that it happened at some other time. And so their testimony was materially false. Who would it be, and how would somebody ever go about prosecuting a district attorney who is, the other than the sheriff, the senior law enforcement official in a county?
I think it's time for the attorney general the attorney general could assign that case to the GBI and let the GBI take it as far as they can and take it to its logical conclusion. I mean, this whole Fani Willis thing, however you say her name, has the odor of mendacity to it, Phil.
Now, that's a new one. Where have we heard that before?
but I think it's well within the rights of the attorney general or the governor. I think the governor has the right to call the GBI in as well, and I think the GBI should do it. I think they're the ones who can do it. If the feds won't do it, and I'm surprised, and of course you can't really tell with the feds, but if there's federal money wrapped into that money that Nathan Wade got, I'm convinced they would have put me in jail if I'd done that.
Now, at one time when I was a baby lawyer, there was a Superior Court judge that took an issue with the local sheriff about how his deputies were dealing with inmates at the courthouse. And so the judge, she's deceased now, but she summoned the sheriff at the time and threatened him with contempt. And the sheriff said to the judge, just deadpan, says, with all due respect, Judge, who you going to get to put me in that jail?
That's right.
And the sheriff was right, because the sheriff is the person literally who's got the keys to the jail. And so that makes the sheriff the most powerful, in my opinion, elected official in any given county. But by the same token, if the sheriff has the keys to the jail, the district attorney controls the grand jury, which brings criminal charges. So we really need some type of, I think, we need some additional type of safeguards to sort of figure out what happens. What do we do when we have someone with that kind of awesome power that's using it in a way that might be politically motivated, and to the point where they say things and they go so far as to perhaps lie under oath, to salvage an issue in a case just so that they can perhaps avoid, personal embarrassment. I want to get back to Laken Riley in a minute, but I want to get your last thoughts on Fani Willis and what the legislature might be able to do, because we know the Senate is looking into this. We know that the Senate's looking into what types of reforms they could come up with. But do you have any ideas or suggestions on what types of laws could be enacted by the legislature to stop the next Fani Willis fiasco before it happens?
Honestly, I'm afraid when the legislature meets and passes new laws, because there's always a law of unintended consequences. But Georgia's been a state for almost 235, 250 years, and
since you were a child, yes.
Since I was in third grade,
Right.
but no, I mean, this has never happened before, to my knowledge. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I've never seen what's going on in Athens or Atlanta. But yeah, the legislature is actually going to have to do something about this, and I regret that. I'm a little embarrassed.
We've got a new oversight body. There's, with Georgia, we created something called the Judicial Qualifications Commission, so that
yes,
there's a state agency that has some oversight over judges. It doesn't have as many teeth as many would like it to have, and it has more teeth than sometimes judges want it to have. But at least there's something. Until very recently, we've had nothing as it pertains to prosecutors. There is now such an agency, but it hasn't really yet started functioning, and it's not up and running, if you will. And so it remains to be seen how much teeth it's going to have. But at least there's something. They passed it 2 legislative sessions ago, and the legislature delegated to the Supreme Court of Georgia the ability to make the rules for the commission. And the Supreme Court basically said, no, it's not our place to get involved in it. So basically the law didn't work, because the Supreme Court said, we're not going to participate in making these rules for this agency. And so the legislature had to go back and change the law, take the Supreme Court out of it, reconstituted the state agency, and it's just now getting off the ground. Hopefully it will have some teeth. Hopefully it will be able to do some good to prevent the next Deborah Gonzalez situation, where you have this Laken Riley prosecutor now, even though she's brought in an outsider. And I want to get to that in a minute. But when this particular office is in charge of the Laken Riley murder case, which I think we agree that, as horrible as it is, legally, it's not going to be a complicated case to take to court and to try. I think we could get a conviction really easily in just a short period of time. But if Deborah Gonzalez is not able to even prosecute the simplest of crimes, I mean, and by simple, I mean, things that are really cut and dry. I mean, a baby lawyer right out of DA school ought to be able to prosecute this and get a conviction, because the evidence is so strong. If she can't even do that, then she's not qualified. So there's got to be a way to do a recall or something like that. Have you heard anything about changing the law to be able to recall elected officials?
No, I haven't heard anything about that. I'm not saying they haven't discussed it, but nothing's come across my email or anything like that. Georgia has a method for removing county sheriffs, county commissioners, other constitutional officers in the courthouse. Each of us have our own way of being removed from office. If A, B, and C happen, we can be removed from office. And the DAs were complaining about it, but it's about time we have a way to remove a DA from office as well.
Well, maybe that's coming. So let's go back to Laken Riley just a minute. So what do you think is going to be coming next in the Laken Riley case? We've got you mentioned there's been another prosecutor brought in. As I understand it, that was someone that's on loan from the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia. That's a state agency that offers support to district attorneys statewide, and it can go so far as to even have them step in and actually go into a courtroom and hold their hand. And that's basically what's happening. So
Yes, it
it's
is.
my understanding they brought in a lawyer who I think maybe even used to work over there in the Athens area to come back and do this. What's going on with that?
She's got good bona fides. She's done a great job, but she tried a 3-defendant murder case in Oconee County shortly after Deborah Gonzalez took office, and did an excellent job with it. Got convictions for all 3 defendants. Tried a clean case. Just a prosecutor that you want representing you and your citizens.
All right.
I think she'll come in. I think she'll do a good job with this case. I'm not worried about it because Deborah Gonzalez's fingers won't be in this pie at all. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be her case. If I were the DA, this is the kind of case I'd want, Phil.
Well, I've got some hidden camera video from Deborah Gonzalez and her first appearance, one of the early appearances in this case. And let me see if I can show her star witness here real quick.
Man, can I get a water or something? I'm so high right now, y'all. I'm about to go to sleep on y'all ass. I ain't gonna tell you no lies.
He ain't gonna tell us no lies here.
No, it sure ain't.
So that's what passes for prosecution back in the state of Georgia. I'm sorry, that has nothing to do with Laken Riley, and it has.
No.
Well, it does have something to do with Fani Willis, but I just can't get away from that. I think that's hilarious. Look in the comments. The people love it. See, it's the stone man. It's the high guy. Anytime we need to bring some levity into it, we can always bring in that guy, because it's just so, if it weren't so sad, it would be just overwhelmingly funny that this is what prosecutors bring in and ask a jury to base a decision on when somebody's, life may be on the line here, and you're going to ask a jury to make a decision or to bring justice to a victim, and you're bringing that kind of garbage for.
Well, that's it. That's it. What are you trying? What are you even doing in this case? This YSL young thug cases. I'm so bamboozled by that case. I usually follow along pretty good, but this has just been something.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out exactly what the essence of is, what he did. But she takes this. Look, when I was a young prosecutor, somebody brought me a RICO case from the local sheriff's office, and it had like 6 giant boxes, and it had like 1 or 2 defendants. So it wasn't some giant scheme. But I looked at those and my eyes just glazed over, Sheriff. And so you know what I did? I dug through those files and I found like 4 or 5 or maybe 7 forged checks. And that was a felony. Each one was a felony. And I just drafted a complaint, an accusation that had like 4, 5, 6 counts of basic garden variety forgery, enough to have at least 60 or 70 years worth of potential prison time on paper. And I didn't need to go through the whole thing of making it some giant racketeering case when you really could pull out the core independent basic parts of it, prosecute them as separate basic simple crimes, and the next thing you know, you got people entering guilty pleas because the evidence of that might be overwhelming. But we didn't have to try put together some giant racketeering case. You're talking about taking a sledgehammer to something when a fly swatter would do.
Yes.
It's just silly that we have prosecutors that want to make these racketeering cases that are so large and so complex, and they just can't be digested by courts in a reasonable way. That YSL case they're talking about, it might take till 2027. It took a year to get a jury. I guarantee you, if they have some underlying crimes in there, they could have carved those out, prosecuted the individuals involved, and it would have already been over.
You know as well as I do, they'd have got guilty pleas probably in a lot of those if they carved out some cases instead of whatever this is. I heard you say that it was may go to 2027. I can't even fathom that. That's not even reasonable. No juror No juror can be expected to do that job, Phil.
All right. Well,
I
we've
don't.
been going at it. We've been going at it 45 minutes now, and I know that you got other things going on, so I won't keep you. And so we can go ahead and wrap this up. But let's make a deal. Will you come back and talk with us some more about Megan Riley or Megan? I saw somebody in the chat about Laken Riley in this particular case as it moves forward and as we get other developments, because this case is horrible as it is. It's just getting started, and we want to make sure that case doesn't come off the rails. So will you come back and talk about
I'll be happy to. I'd love to come back and talk about Laken Riley and Fani Willis and anybody else you want to talk about.
All right. Well, I'm sure there'll be chances for that too, because Fani Willis isn't going anywhere, and we got the appeal ruling that should be coming up any time now, where the Court of Appeals is, I think, going to decide to take the issue of disqualification. We got another motion hearing this week.
Yeah, Thursday.
There's some of I think President Trump's counsel and some others have made some very interesting First Amendment challenges on freedom of speech grounds and things about striking parts of the indictment. The indictment makes allegations, but basically what they've done is they've added what we call conclusory statements. They've kind of skipped ahead, and they've alleged things that really ought to be a question for a jury. So I think she's maybe taken some liberty with how she drafted that indictment to try to take some of these questions out of the hands of the jury. So we've got some very interesting motions coming up.
Didn't she have Nathan Wade drafting for 24 hours, 48 hours straight?
I mean, I don't know. I would just refer you to the text messages, and you can see what he's been up to. All right. So anyway, thank you everybody for the chats. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the memberships. Thank you, Sheriff. I'll let you get back to it, and we appreciate you. So thank you so much, and thanks to all of you guys in the chat who participated live, and anybody who watches moving forward. We appreciate it. Make sure you hit the like. Make sure you subscribe, and of course, join, because joining the channel obviously helps us grow, and it helps us bring new and better and additional content as we move forward. So thanks again, and everybody have a great night.